It began with a glance, one of those silent, long-lasting glances that conveys everything between two people. Words cannot. George did not wave or smile. I was sick of being invisible, so I let him just look. The majority of individuals are unaware of the impact that silence may have. They believe that words are the first step in love, but for me, silence was the first step. Observing him repeatedly rake the same area of parched grass while seeming not to notice that I was reading a book that I wasn't actually reading. We both leaned into the ritual. I continued to live alone while attempting to reconstruct a persona that was not centered on abandonment. He resided across the street in an empty house, surrounded by noise. You wouldn't expect a man like him to notice someone like me. Calm, methodical, over 20 years older than me, and he had creases around his eyes that appeared to stay there, tales he never shared. His spouse was frequently absent. She appeared louder than the house could accommodate while she was at home. She was the type of lady who occupied rooms with her presence, leaving no place for other people. He was shrinking in his own house, as I witnessed. Occasionally, while the world was still soft with slumber in the early morning, I would catch him staring at me. He would pretend to fix something that didn't require mending so he could spend more time outside while I sipped tea on my porch. Flirting was absent. There were no smiles, only a tension that rose around our peaceful mornings like vines. A dot. It wasn't tangible, not initially. It was something riskier and slower, a bond formed through silence rather than words, the way he would nod rather than talk, the way I would stay a bit longer than required on my front steps. Both of us were overly cautious and cognizant of the potential consequences. However, neither of us halted. I reminded myself that he was merely a neighbor, that I was exaggerating the situation, that it didn't matter that my heart raced as he glanced in my direction. However, I began selecting gowns that I ordinarily wouldn't have worn, allowing my hair to fall down more frequently. I knew he would be returning home from work, so I sat outside. It wasn't for him. After the third time, I caught him staring at me as if he had forgotten how to breathe, so I stopped believing what I had told myself. I was cleaning my car in the driveway one afternoon. The street was deserted and the sun was high. I could feel his gaze on me as I leaned to clean the wheel. I didn't look around. I simply continued working, paying attention to every breath and every movement. He was standing by his fence with a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold when I eventually looked up. I briefly felt an electric current flow through me as our eyes locked. Something lighter, not romance or desire. He remained silent. As usual, he simply nodded before returning inside. However, the ensuing quiet wasn't void. It had all of the information we simply disclosed without saying anything. I had trouble falling asleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about him and how peculiar it was that just by glancing at you, someone may make you feel seen. I had previously dated and even experienced romantic love. However, those men saw the meticulously crafted version of me. The sections I concealed were seen by George. When I opened my door the following morning, I discovered a tiny sack dangling from my porch. His garden tree produced lemons, just neatly chosen fruit, no note and no explanation. I closed my eyes and cradled the sack on my chest. I made muffins the following week and put some at his door. No note again. Once more, simply the soft cadence of an unsaid, yet profoundly felt emotion. No words. He became more approachable and offered to assist in fixing items that I hadn't even stated were damaged. A chipped tile, a creaky gate, and a loose shutter. He just ever lingered long enough to let me know that he was there and had noticed me, and every time he left a little more of himself behind, I assured myself that I could manage it, that nothing would happen, and that our delicate, unidentified relationship would remain silent. However, I also began to dream about him. His name was on my lips as I woke up. I was ashamed of myself for it. I detested the way I waited for him and the way I became aware of his absence. This was not how I was expected to feel. Not about the husband of another person. A dot. At night, I sat by the window and watched the light in his kitchen flicker off, wondering if he was also considering me. A dot. It poured a lot one night. The sort of storm that prompts you to light candles and pay attention to the wind as if it were speaking. I heard a knockdown while I was pouring myself a cup of tea. He was the one. With a jacket clinging to his body and a torch in one hand, he stood there wet from the storm. "Just making sure you're all right," he said. His tone was quiet, almost timid. I gave him a nod and welcomed him in. We didn't communicate much. I extended a towel to him. After taking it and drying his hair, he stood by the table and saw the candlelight dancing in the glass. The air was heavy from what we hadn't said as well as the rain. He gave me a serious look. I witnessed everything he was too scared to acknowledge at that very moment. The longing, the pain, the grief. He muttered that he appeared to be at peace. I remained silent since I was at a loss for words. I simply waited for the world to spin off its axis while my heart raced. He didn't give me a kiss. I wasn't touched by him. He simply stood there for a considerable amount of time before turning and walking away. I didn't get any sleep that evening. I knew that things would never be the same again because of a change that had occurred inside of me, not because I was terrified. I secretly didn't want them to be. After he went, the days seemed to drag on forever. He didn't stop by, left no lemons behind, no amiable greetings from the other side of the roadway, just silence that was heavier than normal and distant. I made an effort to convince myself that it was best, that even if nothing physical occurred, he might have felt bad about entering my personal space, that more than guilt was shown by that quiet. It stated that he experienced all of my emotions and was unsure of how to respond to them. I stayed away from my porch during the times he often returned home, but I dozed off one night. I let myself move to music as if no one was looking, left the curtain open, and forgot the outer world existed. My body moved because I needed to be alive, not so that I could be seen. I turned to see him standing outside once more, but I didn't think anyone would notice, as if he had been yanked back the instant we attempted to bury him. No reason, no torch. Just like the previous time, his gaze is on me. I had the option to draw the curtain. I had the option to move away, but I chose not to. I let the music play while I stood in the center of the space. Both of us were aware that the boundary had already been crossed. It was a gentle, almost unsure knock. Neither of us said anything as I opened the door this time. There was no pretense, no explanations. He wasn't invited in. He didn't inquire. Nevertheless, he managed to pass through the doorway. At first, he didn't touch me. He was motionless, breathing shallowly, and looking into my eyes for approval or pardon, possibly comprehending all three. His hand was tentative when it finally touched mine, as if he was worried that I may break. He had trembling, calloused, and heated fingertips. Still, I held them. There was no hurry in the kiss. It had no hunger. It included all of the things we had suppressed, including years of loneliness, weeks of looks, and lives spent acting as though nothing was wrong. He gave me a kiss as if he was trying to recall what it was like to be picked. I gave him a kiss as if I had forgotten what it was like to be needed. There was no hurry, just grief, no mayhem. Two people who weren't supposed to discover each other yet did share a silent sorrow. We didn't speak again after that. Like survivors of an unidentified event, we sat side by side. With our knees hardly touching, his hand was on mine. We weren't in love, we were acquainted. Between delicate and real and impossible, we were something in between. He departed just before sunrise. just a gentle farewell and a glance that lingered in my mind long after the door had closed. No plans, no commitments. Nothing occurred in the days that followed. Nevertheless, everything did. He never visited again. I saw him even though I didn't call for him. On the street, we went by one another. We exchanged quick looks through the windows. We also understood even though no words were exchanged. There was no need to recount what had happened. There was no need to define it. He was a part of a life he was unable to abandon. I had no authority to request it. I wasn't even certain that I wanted him to. The future wasn't the focus of that evening. It had to do with the pain we carried, about understanding that, even for a brief instant, we were important to someone. I can still picture the softening of his eyes as he gazed at me. I was recognized as a form of tranquility he had forgotten existed, not out of desire. And perhaps that's all either of us truly desired. Not controversy or passion, just someone who observed us objectively. I occasionally find myself drinking tea at the window and hoping to get a peek of him. I miss being seen, not because I'm looking for something greater. Very much observed, not as a potential neighbor, but as a human being. He still resides on the other side of the street. His wife continues to come and leave. Their walls are still reverberating with the sound. Although nothing has changed on the outside, we have both changed on the inside. I don't feel invisible anymore. Additionally, I believe that he might not either. I frequently ponder his thoughts upon seeing me now. I don't ask if he feels bad about it or if he recalls how my hand felt in his. It's preferable to leave certain questions unsolved. A dot. Infidelity is a topic of conversation, as if it's always reckless and self-centered. Sometimes, though, it's just two individuals reaching for something warm in the dark while drowning in their own loneliness. It's still not correct. It makes it real, but it doesn't make it fair. I adore the version of myself that George brought out, even if I didn't fall in love with him. The person who danced fearlessly. The person who remained unflinching when someone gave her a serious gaze. The person who felt whole for just one night. I don't tell stories, it's mine, but not when I wear it like a badge. And I recall him not being the person he was to everyone else when the nights grow quiet and the air feels too heavy. He was with me, that man, kind, lost, quiet, and depressed. Perhaps our paths would cross in an other existence. Perhaps we wouldn't let each other go in an other life. However, in this instance, we were precisely what the other needed when things started to fall apart. And occasionally, that's sufficient. Being aware of that brings a certain calm. Long after the storm has passed, there is an odd, bittersweet calm. I don't regret it then. It was not because it was right. I was not alone in my silence for once, nor was he.